Hello, my pack, and welcome back. Before we dive into tonight's chapter, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications, because this story is only getting deeper, darker, and a whole lot more intense. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. The Blood Regent reveals his final move, and Queen Anya is forced to make a choice that would shape the fate of wolves and witches forever. A choice that didn't just end a war, it rewrote centuries of hatred. Chapter 11. When the mark burns. It started at dusk. A pulse. Low, slow, rhythmic. I was standing alone in the war chamber when the crimson symbol on my wrist flared hot. I gasped and gripped the table. Across the stronghold, Authur froze mid-sentence. His mark ignited at the exact same moment. The pain wasn't sharp. It was pulling, like something invisible had hooked into my ribs and was drawing me forward. I tried to resist. The burn intensified. Then came the voice. Distance is an illusion. The pull grew stronger. Footsteps thundered in the corridor. The doors burst open. Authur. We stopped 3 feet apart. The pain vanished instantly. Silence. We stared at each other. Understanding dawned slowly. If we separate, I began. It activates, he finished. Lyra examined the marks under torchlight. They are synchronized sigils, she murmured. Ancient, territorial. Meaning? I demanded. Meaning the Regent tethered your life forces together. The room stilled. If one of you dies, Darius said carefully, the other likely follows. And if you remain apart for too long, Lyra added, the pain will escalate until your bodies fail. I turned slowly toward Authur. So now, I said bitterly, we are not just allies. He met my gaze evenly. We are leverage. The Regent didn't need to break the seal. He just needed to make us reckless. By nightfall, it became undeniable. 10 steps apart, the burn returned. 20, it felt like my lungs were filling with smoke. 30, I dropped to one knee. Authur reached me in 2 strides. The pain stopped the second his hand wrapped around mine. The connection wasn't romantic. It was survival. But survival forced proximity. And proximity did something far more dangerous. It made awareness impossible to ignore. You planned to keep me in a dungeon, I said quietly. Yes. And now you can't be more than a hallway away from me. His mouth twitched slightly. The gods have a sense of humor. I don't believe in gods. He studied me. You will. Chapter 12. The second wave. The Regent didn't wait long. The next attack didn't come from the valley. It came from inside the walls. Screams erupted in the lower barracks. Corrupted wolves turned mid-sleep attacked their own packmates. The tether flared again. Not pain, power. Silver and gold surged simultaneously through our veins. It's reacting to him, I said. No, Authur corrected grimly. It's reacting to us. We ran together into chaos. The infected wolves weren't mindless. They moved with purpose. Eyes fixed on one thing. Me. They're drawn to the witch blood, Kale shouted. Authur stepped in front of me instinctively, but this time I didn't let him shield me. I stepped beside him. Together, I said, and we unleashed it. Not separate attacks. One. Gold-wrapped silver. Silver sharpened gold. The blast ripped through the corridor, purging the corruption without killing the wolves themselves. When the light faded, the infected collapsed alive. Breathing, freed. The council stared. Lyra whispered, You're not breaking the seal. You're rewriting it. That night, we didn't sleep. We couldn't risk distance, so we stood on the battlements, shoulder to shoulder, watching the mountains. You hate me, Authur said quietly. Yes, but not as much as before. I didn't answer, because it was true. I was raised to believe your line destroyed mine, he continued. That witches were treacherous, weak behind their spells. And I was taught wolves were beasts who solved everything with claws. He glanced at me. And I was wrong. The admission hung between us. Before he could respond, the sky split again. The storm did not move like weather. It breathed. Clouds spiraled over the western peaks, not blown by wind, but pulled inward as if something beneath the mountains were inhaling. The wolves gathered in the courtyard below, restless. Some shifted without meaning to. Others bared their teeth at the sky. And I felt it in my bones. Not fear, recognition. Authur stepped beside me on the battlements, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Stay behind me," he ordered. I didn't argue, but I didn't move behind him either. The first crack of thunder did not echo, it answered, and then the mountain split. Not fully, not visibly, but a fissure of red light tore across the clouds, thin as a blade, bright as spilled blood. A voice rolled through the sky, not loud, not shouted, simply present. Little airs of broken oaths. The regent appeared in the sky. Guards tensed. He did not attack. He extended his hand. "Break the seal fully." The words landed like a blade. "And then what?" I asked. "I withdraw from your lands." "You expect us to trust you?" Authur scoffed. "No." The regent's voice lowered. "I expect you to calculate." He looked at me. "If you maintain the seal, it will continue draining your combined power slowly. You will grow strong together. Yes." His eyes flicked to the glowing mark on our wrists. "But it will cost you years. Years. Life." "You're lying," I said quietly. He met my gaze evenly. "Test it." Silence. He wasn't begging. He wasn't threatening. He was offering terms. "Release me," he continued, "and I end the draining. I end the mechanism." "And if you don't?" Authur challenged. The regent's expression did not change. "Then you will have created something even I cannot predict." The storm began to retract slightly, as if conserving strength. "I cannot cross while the seal stands," the regent said calmly. "But the seal is tied to you." My pulse quickened. "Your union strengthens it," he admitted. Authur exhaled slightly. "But then, unless you choose otherwise." Silence fell. Cold understanding dawned. "You need consent," I said slowly. The storm did not deny it. "A willing vessel unbinds the gate." Authur stepped fully in front of me now. "Absolutely not." The regent ignored him. "You feel the fracture," he said to me. "The imbalance in your blood." I did. Always had. "You are incomplete because the ritual was interrupted." My breath caught. What ritual? The merging of realms. Lightning flickered red again. "You are meant to rule both." The weight of that statement crushed the air from my lungs. "Join with me willingly," the regent whispered, voice smooth as silk over steel. "And I will restore what was taken." Images flashed in my mind. No more curse. No more war. Wolves and witches united. Power without fracture. Peace. Then another image. The seal breaking. The storm fully descending. The unknown. Authur's voice cut through the pressure. "You are not a tool," he said fiercely. "Not for him. Not for your ancestors. Not for prophecy." His hands cupped my face. His gold eyes burned with something raw and unguarded. "You choose your fate." The storm rumbled. "Choose carefully, vessel," the regent warned. "The world shifts with your answer." The black rain stopped. The fissure pulsed once. Waiting. And for the first time since this began, everyone waited on me. Chapter 13. The answer. The storm waited. The mountains held their breath. Even the wolves below, warriors bred for chaos, stood frozen in silence. I could feel him. The blood regent. Not fully here, not fully gone. Pressing at the edges of reality like a tide testing a shore. "Choose carefully, vessel." I stepped around Authur. He grabbed my wrist. "Anya." His voice wasn't commanding. It was afraid. Not for his kingdom. For me. That realization nearly undid me. I turned to him slowly. "If I say no," I whispered, "this never ends." His jaw tightened. "If you say yes, you become his doorway." I nodded once. Then I stepped forward to the edge of the battlements. Rainwater dripped from the stone like the world itself was bleeding. I lifted my chin toward the storm. "You want balance?" I called out. The clouds pulsed red. "Yes." You want restoration? Yes. You want consent? A pause. Yes. I inhaled slowly. Then I smiled. You don't get it. The storm faltered. I am not your first vessel, I said steadily. And I will not be your second. The fissure snapped brighter. Anger rippled through the clouds. You misunderstand your purpose. No, I said quietly. You misunderstand mine. Silver fire ignited across my skin, but it did not surge outward. It sank inward, deep, into bone, into blood, into whatever fractured place inside me had always felt unfinished. The regent's voice sharpened. What are you doing? Finishing the ritual, I replied. Authur's head snapped toward me. Anya, you don't know. I do, because I remembered. Not fully, but enough. The ancient merging had failed because it relied on domination, on forcing realms together, on binding power instead of integrating it. But balance isn't forced. It's chosen. I turned to Authur. Take my hand. He didn't hesitate. Gold flared along his arms. Our fingers intertwined. But this time, we didn't unleash power outward. We pulled it inward. Silver and gold spiraled between us, not clashing, not competing, blending. The storm screamed. You cannot contain me. I'm not containing you, I said calmly. I'm closing what you were never meant to walk through. The fissure in the sky began to shrink, not because of force, because the imbalance it fed on was dissolving. The curse between wolves and witches had been a fracture, a wound. He thrived on that wound, and we were sealing it. The regent's voice twisted with fury. You think unity imprisons me? No, I whispered. Your existence requires division. The red light faltered. You were born of their fear. Lightning cracked violently. You were sustained by their hatred. The fissure trembled, and you will fade without it. The storm convulsed. Wolves shielded their faces. Stone shattered along the battlements. The regent roared now, no longer smooth, no longer calm. You cannot erase me. I don't need to, I said. I just need to stop feeding you. I closed my eyes. Not in surrender, in focus, and I forgave them. The ancestors, the betrayal, the centuries of blood. Not because they deserved it, but because I refused to carry it. Silver and gold ignited brighter, not violent, radiant. The fissure collapsed inward like a dying star. The red light imploded. The storm shattered into harmless rain, and the sky cleared. Silence fell across the mountains. No rumble, no whisper, no presence pressing at the veil. The blood regent was gone, not destroyed, not sealed, starved. Chapter 14. Aftermath. For several long seconds, no one moved. Then one wolf shifted shakily to his feet. Then another. Kale dropped his weapon. Lyra fell to her knees, not in fear, in awe. It's quiet, she whispered. Authur was still holding my hand. The gold in his eyes had softened. You did it, I exhaled slowly. No. I looked down at our joined hands. We did. Something subtle shifted through the courtyard. Not magical, cultural. The wolves were looking at me differently now, not as a threat, not as a weapon, but as something else. Selene stepped forward slowly. Her gaze was unreadable. The curse, she said carefully. I searched inward. The constant pull between wolf and witch magic was gone. Not suppressed, balanced. It's broken, I answered. A murmur spread across the stronghold. Centuries of tension, dissolved in a single choice. Authur turned to the gathered wolves. The war between our bloodlines ends tonight. No one argued, because they had felt it too. The absence of something corrosive. Something that had always been there. Poison in the marrow. Gone. Peace felt unfamiliar. The stronghold no longer trembled with tension. Wolves moved through the courtyard without glancing at me, like I might erupt into silver fire at any moment. No one flinched when I passed. No one whispered. The fracture was gone. But something else had shifted too. Him. Authur had been everywhere since the storm cleared, speaking with generals, meeting elders, sending word to distant packs. Yet every time I turned, his eyes found mine. Not possessive, not territorial, certain, and it unnerved me more than any battle. The sun was setting when I slipped onto the western balcony of the keep. The sky was painted in molten gold, and soft violet wolf and witch colors woven together without conflict. Footsteps sounded behind me. I didn't need to turn. "You always find the highest place," Authur said quietly. "It's easier to breathe up here." He stepped beside me. Close, not touching. The air between us hummed, but not with magic this time. With awareness. "You were magnificent," he said. I huffed softly. "I nearly unraveled the sky. You rewrote centuries of hatred." His voice was steady, but something deeper moved beneath it. "You chose mercy when you had every reason to choose vengeance." I looked at him then. "You would have supported me either way." Yes, no hesitation. That word hit harder than any confession. "Even if I had freed him?" His jaw flexed. "I would have fought beside you," he said. "Or against you, but never without you." My breath caught. The wind tugged at my hair, sending it across my face. His hand lifted instinctively, then paused, waiting, always waiting now. I swallowed. "You don't have to ask permission for everything, Alpha." A slow smile touched his mouth. "Not everything," he murmured. His fingers brushed my cheek. Gentle, reverent. The contact sent warmth down my spine, not wildfire, not lightning. Heat, human. "You are no longer bound to me by prophecy," he said quietly. "No, no curse. No, no ancient enemy forcing proximity." I held his gaze. "No." The silence stretched, then softer. "Then choose me," he said. Not as command, not as Alpha. As a man? My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. "I have," I whispered. His control shattered. Not violently, not wildly, just honestly. His hand slid into my hair as he stepped closer. My palms flattened against his chest, feeling the steady thunder of his heartbeat beneath my fingers. "Anya," he breathed, like my name had been carved into him. For so long we had touched in battle, in power, in survival. This was different. Slow, intentional. His forehead rested against mine. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. I didn't. Instead, I closed the distance. The kiss wasn't explosive. It wasn't magic tearing through the sky. It was warm, deep, certain. Gold did not clash with silver. It blended, not flaring outward, but settling, like two halves finally recognizing the shape they were always meant to fill. His hand tightened at my waist as I leaned into him. Not claimed, chosen. The world did not tremble. The mountains did not split, but something inside me clicked into place so perfectly, it stole the air from my lungs. When we finally broke apart, his thumb brushed over my lower lip slowly, like he was memorizing the moment. "I would have waited a lifetime," he said. I smiled faintly. "You already did." Chapter 15. The Mark of Choice. The bond between us felt different now. Not a chain, not a prophecy, a thread. Alive. I felt it pulse gently between us, not demanding. Inviting. Authur glanced down at my wrist suddenly. A faint shimmer of silver traced along my skin, mirroring gold along his. Not a brand, not a mark of ownership. A crest, woven symbols wolf and witch intertwined. I stared at it. That wasn't there before. "No," he said softly. "This is what it looks like when it's mutual." Emotion rose unexpectedly in my throat. For centuries, unions between our bloodlines had been forged through politics, fear, or desperation. This one was ours. He kissed my forehead this time. Gentle, steady. "Queen," he murmured. I arched a brow. Careful. A rare, unguarded grin broke across his face. Partner, then. Better. Below us, the wolves began lighting torches as night fell. A celebration would begin soon. A new era. But up here, it was just us. No counsel, no prophecy, no ancient voice whispering through storms. Just choice, his hand intertwined with mine again. And this time, neither of us let go. The wind rolled down from the mountains, carrying the scent of pine and distant snow. Anya looked toward the dark outline of the peaks rising in the distance. Beyond them lay Elendriel. Home. She hadn't seen it since the night he captured her. Authur followed her gaze. Well, he said after a moment, let's get you back home to Elendriel. The words settled in her chest like a sudden weight. Home. You'd walk wolves into a witch kingdom? She asked carefully. I'm not sending you back alone. My people may try to kill you. They'll have to get through you first, he replied. I almost smiled. Almost. He turned slightly toward me. If you go back alone, the war never really ends, he said. They'll see you as a survivor of the conflict. His gaze moved toward the resting pack. But if you walk through those gates with us, it changes the story. Anya understood immediately. Wolf and witch, side by side. Not conqueror and captive. Not enemies forced into peace. Partners. You realize this might terrify them, she said. Authur shrugged. Good. Before she could answer, Kale's voice called across the clearing. If we're marching somewhere, someone should probably wake the pack. Authur glanced back briefly, then looked at Anya again. Well? She took a slow breath. Then she nodded. All right, Alpha. A small grin appeared. All right, Queen. By sunrise, the camp was moving again. Wolves packed their gear, checked weapons, and rolled sleeping furs. The mood was lighter now that the corruption had been purged from their ranks. Word spread quickly. They were escorting the Queen of Elendriel home. Anya mounted her horse near the front of the column. Authur walked beside her, adjusting the leather bracers on his wrists. You nervous? He asked, terrified. Good. She glanced down at him. You enjoy that answer far too much. I enjoy watching history happen. The pack began to move. Boots and hooves echoed softly through the valley as they climbed toward the mountain pass. The journey lasted 2 days. The land slowly changed as they crossed the high ridges separating the wolf territories from the lands of Elendriel. The forests grew brighter. Silver-leafed trees appeared along the slopes. Magic hummed faintly in the air. On the 3rd morning, they reached the final ridge. Below them, Elendriel rose from the valley like something out of legend. Tall silver towers caught the sunlight, and white stone walls curved around the city like protective arms. Authur stopped walking. Well, he said quietly. That's impressive. Anya couldn't speak for a moment. She had dreamed of this view for months. Behind them, wolves gathered along the ridge, staring down at the city with open curiosity. Your people live in a palace, Kale muttered. Anya smirked faintly. Try not to look too impressed when we arrive. No promises. The group began the final descent toward the gates. Down in the city, movement was already spreading along the walls. Guards rushed into position as the approaching group became visible. By the time they reached the outer road, the gates of Elendriel were sealed shut. Archers lined the walls. Spears pointed outward. Anya guided her horse forward alone until she stood clearly within sight of the guards above. Open the gates, she called. The captain on the wall leaned forward, staring in disbelief. Your Majesty? It's me. His gaze shifted behind her to the wolves waiting quietly on the road. What are they doing here? They're with me. Murmurs spread along the walls. Finally, the captain shouted down again. You're bringing wolves into Elendriel? Yes. A long silence followed. Then Anya spoke again, her voice carrying across the courtyard. The war is over. The captain hesitated. Authur stepped forward beside her now, clearly visible to the guards. A wolf, an alpha, standing beside their queen. Anya lifted her chin. They are not invaders, she said. They are allies. The captain stared at them both. Then, slowly, he raised his hand. The massive gates of Elendriel creaked open, not wide, but enough. Anya exhaled softly. Authur glanced sideways at her. Well, he said, that went better than expected. She smiled faintly. Don't celebrate yet. Together they rode forward through the gates. Behind them, the wolves followed. For the first time in history, a wolf pack walked into Elendriel without claws drawn or weapons raised, not as conquerors, but as the beginning of a new alliance. As they entered the courtyard, people gathered along the streets, whispering and staring. Authur leaned closer to her saddle. So, he murmured, this is home. Anya looked around the city she had fought so hard to return to. Yes. Then she glanced down at him. And now it's yours too. The courtyard of Elendriel had never been this silent. Hundreds of citizens had gathered along the marble walkways and balconies overlooking the main square. Guards stood frozen at their posts, unsure whether to lower their weapons or tighten their grip. Wolves, inside Elendriel. The thought alone had been enough to start wars for generations. Anya dismounted slowly, her boots touching the white stone she had grown up walking as a child. For a moment, she simply stood there, taking in the familiar towers, the fountains, the long banners of silver and blue swaying in the wind. She had imagined this moment many times. In some dreams, she returned alone. In others, she returned with an army. She had never imagined returning like this. Behind her, Authur signaled quietly to his pack. The wolves spread out slightly but remained disciplined, calm, their hands far from their weapons. They watched everything carefully, but there was no aggression in their posture, only awareness. Kale leaned slightly toward another wolf. Try not to stare too much, he muttered. I'm trying not to touch anything, the other whispered back. The silver stone buildings clearly fascinated them. From the steps of the royal hall, a group of Elendriel's council members emerged. Long robes brushed the ground as they descended the stairs, their expressions ranging from shock to deep suspicion. At their head walked an older woman with sharp silver hair and eyes that had clearly seen too many wars. Counselor Salvara. Her gaze moved immediately to Anya. Your Majesty. Anya inclined her head slightly. Counselor. Salvara's attention then shifted to Authur and the wolves behind him. You return with guests. There was no warmth in her tone. Anya stepped forward. They escorted me safely through the mountain territories and the valley. Salvara folded her hands into her sleeves. And now they stand in the heart of Elendriel. Yes. The tension in the courtyard tightened. Salvara's gaze rested on Authur for a long moment. And which one of them is their leader? Authur stepped forward before Anya could answer. I am. Several guards immediately raised their spears. Salvara studied him carefully. The Alpha. Authur. The counselor's eyes narrowed slightly. You understand why your presence here is unsettling. Authur gave a small nod. I do. And yet you came. I did. Her gaze flickered to Anya again. And you allowed it. Anya's voice was calm but firm. I invited it. Whispers rippled through the gathered citizens. Salvara looked between them both, clearly weighing something. You return after the fall of the valley creatures, she said slowly. After corruption reached even the wolves themselves. Anya nodded. It did. And yet you stand beside them. Yes. Salvara turned her gaze back to the wolves again. Why? For a moment, the courtyard was so quiet that the fountain water could be heard splashing behind them. Anya stepped forward again. Because the corruption we fought in the valley did not belong to wolves or witches. Her voice carried across the square. It belonged to something older, something that fed on our hatred. Some of the guards lowered their spears slightly. They fought it beside me, Anya continued, and when the darkness reached into their dreams, they trusted me to purge it. Salvara's expression softened just a fraction. And you succeeded. Yes. Her eyes returned to Authur. And what do you want from Elendriel, Alpha? Authur met her gaze steadily. Nothing. The answer seemed to surprise her. I came because your queen asked for safe passage home. He gestured slightly toward the city around them. She belongs here. Anya glanced at him briefly. And you? Salvara asked. Authur's mouth curved faintly. I go where my pack goes. A long silence followed. Finally, Silvara stepped forward until she stood directly before them. She studied Anya carefully, then glanced down at the faint silver-gold crest that shimmered along Anya's wrist. Her eyes widened slightly. That mark. Anya didn't hide it. Yes, Silvara looked at Authur's wrist, where the same mark glowed faintly. Understanding dawned slowly across the counselor's face. You two are bound. By choice, Anya said quietly. The courtyard erupted into whispers. Silvara raised her hand, silencing them again. When she spoke next, her voice carried through the entire square. For centuries, Elendriel has stood apart from the wolf territories. She turned slowly, addressing the gathered citizens. Our histories are written in blood and mistrust. Her gaze returned to Anya. And yet our queen has returned, standing beside the alpha of the wolves. She paused, not as prisoner, not as enemy, but as ally. Silvara looked at Authur again. If this is a trick, it isn't. If this is a claim of power, it isn't. Then what is it? Authur answered simply. A chance to stop fighting. The words settled heavily over the courtyard. Silvara turned slowly back toward the city gates, where the wolves stood waiting patiently. For the first time, she looked less like a counselor and more like someone imagining a future she had never allowed herself to consider. Finally, she sighed. Very well. She turned back to the guards. Lower your weapons. The spears dropped. A collective breath moved through the crowd. Silvara faced the wolves again. Elendriel welcomes guests who come in peace. Then she looked directly at Authur. But understand this, Alpha. If you harm our queen, Authur smiled faintly. You'll have a very angry wolf pack to deal with. For a moment, Silvara blinked. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. A small laugh, but genuine. Very well, she said. Perhaps this alliance has a chance after all. As the tension in the courtyard began to dissolve, Anya turned slightly toward Authur. Well, she murmured. You're still alive. He leaned closer. Your counsel is terrifying. You haven't met the rest of them yet. Kale approached from behind, glancing around the city with obvious fascination. So, he said quietly, are we allowed to explore, or should we keep pretending to look intimidating? Anya smiled. I think Elendriel can survive a few curious wolves. Authur looked out over the city walls, the towers gleaming in the sunlight. For the first time in generations, wolves stood inside Elendriel without war. He glanced back at Anya. You know, he said softly, this might actually work. Yes, she said. I think it will. The first night in Elendriel was uneasy, not hostile, just uncertain. The wolves had been given quarters in the outer wing of the royal compound, a section normally reserved for visiting dignitaries. The rooms were large, with high arched windows and silver lanterns glowing softly along the stone walls. Still, the pack looked out of place among the elegant architecture. Kale stood near one of the windows, staring down at the city below. You witches really like towers, he muttered. Another wolf nearby ran his fingers along the carved silver rail of the balcony. And shiny things? Don't touch anything, Kale warned. I didn't break it. Yet? Across the hall, 2 Elendriel guards watched them cautiously. The wolves noticed, of course, but no one reacted. Peace required patience. Meanwhile, deeper inside the palace, Anya walked through familiar corridors she had not seen in months. Torches flickered along the walls, illuminating murals of Elendriel's history queens, ancient battles, the founding of the kingdom. She slowed as she reached the tall doors of the royal chamber, her chamber. For a moment, she hesitated. Authur stood beside her. You all right? He asked quietly. She nodded slowly. It just feels strange. Being home? Yes. He studied the carved doors. You want me to wait outside? Anya looked at him, then shook her head. No. She pushed the doors open. The chamber beyond looked exactly as she remembered, tall windows overlooking the moonlit gardens, shelves filled with old books, silver drapes flowing softly in the night breeze. But the room felt different, empty. Not lonely, just waiting. She walked slowly toward the balcony doors and stepped outside. Below them, Elendriel stretched across the valley, lanterns glowing along the streets like scattered stars. Authur joined her at the railing. "So," he said quietly, "this is the famous royal view." She leaned against the cool stone. "I used to come out here when things felt overwhelming. And now? Now I'm standing here with an alpha who somehow ended up inside my palace." He smirked slightly. "Life is unpredictable." She glanced sideways at him. "You handled the council well today. I've dealt with stubborn leaders before. Are you calling me stubborn?" "I wouldn't dare." She laughed softly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city lights flickered below, and the quiet of the night settled around them. Then Authur's voice lowered. "You were brave today." Anya shook her head. "I was terrified. That's usually when people are the bravest." She studied his face in the soft moonlight. "You didn't have to stay." "I know. You could have taken your pack home after the valley." "I could have, but you didn't." He met her gaze steadily. "You already know why." Her heartbeat quickened slightly. The bond between them had been there since the curse began, something ancient and complicated. But now that the battles were over, the connection felt different, simpler, real. She leaned her head briefly against his shoulder, looking out over the glowing city. Below them, Elendriel slept peacefully. Above them, the stars stretched across the sky. For the first time since the war began, the world felt calm. Authur wrapped an arm gently around her waist. "So what happens tomorrow, Your Majesty?" Anya watched the lights of her kingdom. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we start building something new." He nodded. "Together. And for the first time in centuries, the future of Elendriel and the Wolf territories no longer looked like a battlefield. It looked like a beginning. Chapter 16. The Fracture Within. Peace had lasted 3 days. That was all. 3 days of torchlight and laughter in the courtyard. 3 days of wolves and witches sharing tables instead of battlefields. 3 days of hope. And then the body was found. A young wolf guard. No wounds. No blood, but drained. Not of life, of magic. Lyra's hands trembled as she examined him. "This isn't the regent," she whispered. "His presence is gone." Authur's expression darkened. "Then what is it?" I felt it before I answered. Not an external force. An echo. "When we broke the curse," I said slowly, "we removed the poison." Kale frowned. "That sounds like a good thing." "It is," I replied. "But poison doesn't disappear. It settles." Celine's eyes widened. "Into people." Yes, into those who had built identity around hatred. Into those who did not want unity. Into those who had lost power when balance returned. A threat from within. The council dispersed to investigate quietly. Panic would fracture what we had just built. But the truth was clear. Someone was siphoning magic to recreate division. To restore imbalance. To bring back the old order. And in the midst of it, the weight returned. Responsibility. Fear. What if this never ends? I asked softly later that night. We were alone in the royal chamber, now firelight dancing against stone walls. Authur stood near the window, shoulders tense. "It ends," he said firmly, "but not because the world stops testing us." He crossed the room slowly. "It ends because we stop letting fear decide who we are." I studied him in the quiet. The alpha, the king, the man who had stood between me and a storm. "You're afraid too," I said. His mouth curved faintly. "I would be a fool not to be." He reached for my hand. "But I am not afraid of losing." His thumb brushed my knuckles gently. "I am afraid of losing you." The vulnerability in his voice broke something open inside me. "You won't," I whispered. He searched my face, as if committing it to memory. "We were forged in war," he murmured. "Let us not forget to live in peace." The fire crackled softly. The threat outside the chamber walls was real. But so was this. So were we. I stepped closer. "Then don't hold back," I said quietly. His breath hitched barely. You're certain? Yes. Not prophecy. Not destiny. Choice. His hand slid to my waist, drawing me in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. I didn't. The kiss this time was deeper, unrushed. Not born of relief or adrenaline, but devotion. His fingers traced along my spine, reverent, memorizing. My hands tangled in his hair, grounding. Outside these walls, someone plotted division. Inside them, we chose unity. He lifted me gently, carrying me toward the bed as if I were something sacred, not fragile, precious. The world did not shatter. Magic did not flare violently. Instead, silver and gold glowed softly around us, warm light spilling across stone. Not a display of power, a reflection of harmony. Every touch was intentional, every breath shared. The joining of wolf and witch, not as weapon, but as promise, and when we finally lay wrapped together, heart to heart, skin warm against skin, the bond between us settled into something deeper than magic. Trust. Outside, the torches flickered in the wind. Inside, we anchored each other. Whatever storm came next, we would meet it together. The culprit revealed himself at dawn, not a stranger. One of the elder wolves, traditional, revered, terrified of change. You erased what made us strong, he shouted in the courtyard. You erased purity. Murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd. Authur stepped forward, calm but immovable. Strength, built on hatred, is weakness. The elder sneered. You would dilute our bloodline for a witch? I felt the sting of that word. But I did not rise to anger. Instead, I stepped beside Authur. Your fear is understandable, I said evenly. You lived your entire life believing division protected you. The elder's magic pulsed, erratically fractured by bitterness. But look around you, I continued. Has unity weakened you? The wolves stood taller now, not divided, not snarling, steady. The elder's power flickered uncertainly. You don't belong here, he whispered to me. For the first time, I smiled gently. I do. Silver and gold shimmered faintly around Authur and me. Not threatening, inviting. You can stand with us, Authur said. Or you can cling to a ghost. The elder trembled. Then, slowly, his magic dimmed. The siphoning stopped. The imbalance dissolved. Not through execution, through choice. He dropped to one knee, not in submission to me, but to peace. Weeks passed. Wolves and witches trained together. Magic stabilized. Trade routes reopened. Children ran through courtyards without being told which bloodline to fear. And one evening, under a sky no longer split by storms, Authur stood before the gathered realm. He took my hand publicly. No council mandate. No ritual necessity. Just truth. We are not wolf above witch, he declared, nor witch above wolf. He looked at me. We are balance. Cheers. Rose, not forced. Earned. Later, as the celebration swelled below, we stood again on the balcony where everything had shifted. You realize, I said softly, this will not be perfect. He smiled. It doesn't need to be. He brushed his lips against mine, slow, sure. The mountains stood quiet. The sky clear. The curse broken. The regent starved. The division healed. For the first time in generations, there was no prophecy guiding the future. Only us, hand in hand, building it. Epilogue, the thread. Years later, when stories were told of the night the sky split, they did not speak of the blood regent with fear. They spoke of the queen who chose forgiveness, the alpha who chose partnership, and the moment wolf and witch became one realm, not through conquest, not through dominance, through love. On the highest balcony of Elendriel, silver hair now streaked faintly with age, I leaned into the warmth at my side. Authur's hand still fit mine perfectly. You were always meant for me, he murmured. I smiled softly. No, I corrected. I chose you, and beneath a peaceful sky, with no storms left to silence. He kissed me, not as alpha, not as king, but as the man who stood beside me when the world changed. And in that quiet moment, balance wasn't something we fought for. It was something we lived. The end.